Go ahead.
Well, hi everyone. It's really great to be here. And I just want to say, Todd and I are married, and we were in his gallery at one point, and Sandy Hancher, who's a part of the club, came in, and we had a wonderful conversation and became friends on Facebook. And I posted a couple photos there, and she sent me the invite for the Fairfax Photography Club. So my husband's a professional photographer, Todd Pickering, and I thought, I'm in the photography club. But I love it. It's just great to see so much creativity happening. And I shyly occasionally post a little something. So I've never had the pleasure of introducing my husband, but I'm going to. And I did take notes because I'm going to read. It's a little easier for me. I just want to say I'm a little biased. I am his wife. And I also hear this from so many people that Todd is really an amazing artist and photographer and human being as well, with a big, big, big heart. Todd's a professional fine art photographer, and he's been photographing for 40 years. His work embodies what Todd calls conversations with nature. And in my experience, Todd's heart and soul truly sees and receives the natural world, translating that presence of being into images of beauty. Todd has an education at the San Francisco Art Institute where he studied photography and sculpture. And he has showed in many galleries, but currently he's showing at Cavallo Point in Sausalito in a group show after doing a couple of solo shows there. He's also showing at the Post Ranch in Big Sur, at Leona's Gallery in Point Reyes, and he has a very small studio in Inverness called Still Point Studio. Todd has corporate and private collections, and those have included Banana Republic, UCSF Hospital, Hyatt Hotels, Genentech, and Twitter, among others. He has publications, a book called Lagunitas Creek, Hope and Restoration, and he's had work in numerous magazines, including Bay Nature, Sunset, Orion, Marin Magazine, People Magazine, the New York Times, and the San Francisco Chronicle, among others. His commercial work has included a lot of work with different wineries, including a 10-year position with Opus One Winery, which hired him as a fine art photographer, Ink Grade, Linmar, Matt Taylor wineries. He's worked with architects and designers, with hospitals, including being commissioned to create a full-size mural for the Oakland Kaiser, which was an amazing project. He's done lots of portraits and product shoots for many businesses, and he currently is photographing for Guide Dogs for the Blind on a regular basis, which he absolutely loves because one of Todd's big, big loves, besides photography and me, of course, I hope, are dogs. Todd loves dogs. And he's also done a lot of teaching. Currently, he's an instructor with Visionary Wild, where he will be leading a workshop in Point Reyes in January. Unfortunately, it's already full, but he's doing some work with me now. And he's been a guest presenter and teacher at art schools, colleges, universities, and photography clubs throughout the United States. And I'll just say during shelter in place, Todd and I started hiking every Friday together, and he actually made this big map. And so every time we did a new trail, we would mark it in Point Reyes, and we just explored and explored. I was photographing with my cell phone for the first time going out with him and just fell in love with pushing a button and then seeing what was there. And so Todd bought me my first camera, my first real camera and lens. And it's just been a really beautiful way to connect, both with each other, but also with nature. So I want to introduce you to my husband, who is a beautiful artist and a beautiful human being. This is Todd Pickering.
Thanks, Cindy. Good job.
Yeah.
Cindy asked me to give her some notes, and I wrote down a few things, and she's like, "That's it." So I'm glad somebody else did it rather than me. I would have told you that I take pictures. Okay, I'm gonna open up my slideshow here, so just give me a moment, and we will. I'll have to share here. Find this. There we are. Share screen.
It focuses on the criminal justice system.
What is that? Okay, is everyone seeing the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. So there's my name floating in the sky, Todd Pickering. I've been photographing out in Point Reyes in some ways my whole life. My grandfather took me on my first hike out to Arch Rock in Bear Valley in 1966 when I was 6 with a little Instamatic camera. And I think I've just been doing the same thing my whole life. In reality, I love getting out into nature, and I've also surfed since I was about 8 years old. So this image is kind of a self-portrait in a way, though that's not me. I hope these photographs have some inspirational quality for you. And please, I want you to ask questions. Can be in any aspect of what I show. I've got a lot of images, but I'll try to keep them. Stephanie, what time are we right now?
7:20.
Okay, we'll try to keep it to an hour. Does that work for everybody?
And then
Yep.
maybe Q&A at the end.
Yeah.
You want me
Great.
to let you know at like 50 minutes?
Yeah. I don't know why I show this showing this one at the first for the first photograph, but it's I was teaching a workshop out in Wyoming at Devil's Tower, and this buffalo was there, and I just love this image, the muscular quality of it in the relationship. In Point Reyes, it's you're all from this area, so I'm sure you've been out in that hiked out in that area. It's a very subtle landscape. There's not a lot of, in some ways, it's not very dramatic like a lot of the national parks. You have blue sky and a lot of brown, dry grasses usually, sometimes green. So I'm always challenged to find some way of photographing it that gives it some sort of drama, and using a piece of driftwood in the foreground and in relationship to the point off in the distance there and the storm clouds. This image here, a way of showing a tree in a different way, where you're seeing the reflection of the top of the trees, and then the middle point in the distance, you see the center part of the tree, and then you see the roots in the foreground. So it's a way of looking at a tree in a different way. Been having some amazing experience with owls since Cindy and I moved to this area in Forest Knolls. We've been having some resident northern spotted owls that we've been able to spend a lot of time with, and feel really blessed for that. This is out at Drake's Beach, and using this beautiful blade of sand to create a lead-in point to the image, and bringing, the challenge in the landscape is always finding, in some ways, an order in the chaos. Like when you go into the forest, it seems very chaotic, and how do you find order within that? And the same with at the beach here. How do you find some sort of dramatic way of leading a viewer into the image? Looking for images in unexpected ways. I photograph feathers. There's a few in here of feathers in different ways. And this is just looking up through a skylight in a car with raindrops on it. I saw those beautiful drops and I thought, well, it needs some sort of object in there to give it some kind of quality. And I just love the results of it. I think it's very dramatic and kind of luscious in a way. It makes a beautiful print. I do all my own printing. I do all my own framing. I make handmade frames for all my shows. This is out at Elephant Rock, and I'll be damned if he doesn't look like an elephant. So I wanted to create something other than just a photograph of that rock. And I talked to Cindy about this when we go out and photograph, about having usually 3 elements that create some sort of tension. So having a foreground and a midground and then some sort of object, some way that there's some sort of narrative going on that gives it some sort of interest. But then there's also just pointing at the object that is beautiful or interesting to me. This I got at the same level as the bird, as the red-tailed hawk, up on a cliff face, so that I could get. It's not oftentimes that you see the actual red tail on one of these birds. I found a whale vertebrae out at Drake's Beach and spent some time with it. Actually, some days I hid it in the bushes so I could return and photograph it a few times. But again, having something in the foreground very prominent, something in the midground, which is that triangle rock, and then something in the horizon line. So there's a way that your eye gets led through the image. And a great horned owl. Sometimes you just photograph what's right in front of you. I'm very guilty of commonly putting the object that I want people to see right in the center. Right. And sometimes people say that that's not the way to do it, but I really, if I want to show something in its intensity, like the gaze of this owl, I'll put it right in the center.
So can I ask what lens you used on that?
This is probably at about 200. Yeah, it was a longer telephoto lens, but I think we were pretty close to it.
How did you get that close to him?
This particular owl we'd seen many times in this tree, and he seemed to be pretty comfortable with people. I think probably just witnessing and felt safe in its location, both from above and from below. And then also I think it witnessed a lot of people walking by all day that it just didn't seem to be worried about it.
You seem to be like at the same horizontal height as him. Were you on a hill, or did you?
It's a little bit of a rise looking at it, but it's looking up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's an image in here of 2 northern spotted that I'm right. I actually climbed a tree to get right at level height. This is actually the sun in the fog. Sometimes it comes out through the fog and it's not so blown out that you can't use it. So just really buried and silhouetted the bird and the tree in order to bring the exposure for the sun in the proper place. Again, just placing it right in the center because I really want that to be almost like a logo in a way. Bugling Tule elk over Tomales Bay. I've been photographing these a lot lately. I'm going to a pond and hanging out and photographing them. So basically, I'm telling a story of the place that I love, which is Point Reyes and the surrounding region, and I'm filling in the gaps. There's a lot of things that I hadn't spent time photographing, so I'm sort of doing things that I want to include in a book eventually. And then showing a detail. You sort of have the grand view and then a detail, more intimate. And this is kind of an interesting sequence in that, it's I think it's just incredible to see these large animals in relationship to the ocean. So this was a great location to get this story told. I don't know if there's many places in the world where you get a scene like this. Very different than the Rockies, where you have elk, but there's no ocean. And then isolating one. My wife was with me, Cindy was with me, and she was photographing this scene. But I saw that the light was getting really beautiful, and so I ran around really quickly to the other side to get this image. So I'm always looking for other options as I'm working and imagining into what's possible based on a lot of experience. This is a northern spotted owl. I call this sunny owl or happy owl. He was just so content. Um, I think that's what one of the things the camera does so beautifully is it allows us to have an experience and then to reflect on it later and to just have a shot of this owl and to be able to just really gaze into it and look at it for extended time.
Is that the same owl as the other?
No, different year, many years later, actually. Yeah. I love photographing waves. This one, I just love how it froze the motion almost into frozen ice, the detail of it. This egret, just not a lot to say about it. Sometimes just photographing the beauty of the actual creature and letting it just shine and be what it is. Basically, our job there is just to show up. Pelican. I also love this wave. I love the frozen sculptural quality of it. Um, Again, just to have this, I still haven't made a large print of this, but I'm going to. I think it's just a really dynamic photograph of a coyote, and such a healthy coyote, so beautiful. This hawk also, young red tail. This one I actually dug a pit in the sand and put a net over me, and the pelicans were flying right over my head, and I was photographing them. This is with a fairly wide angle lens, I think with a 70 millimeter lens, so it was pretty close. Just always looking for a new way of seeing and describing the things that I think that are beautiful. And like here's the, you know, we're all loving beautiful sunsets and sunny days, but a foggy day can be a beautiful blessing where we have um, something like this happening. This is out at the Drake's Estero, great American white pelicans. And this is just cute. I mean, look at those little, beautiful little creatures. As I photographed over the years, I'm ending up with a lot of pairs. There's some other ones in here. This one I sat for 10 minutes, not very far away. You know, this is like a 100 millimeter lens. He cleaned his paws, and I don't know quite what was going on, but he just didn't seem to care.
Are you actually that close or are you cropping quite a bit?
No, this is the, well, I've cropped, I guess, a little bit because there was a bush to the right.
Mhm.
But this is a full frame image.
Where was this?
This is out on Pierce Point, Tomales Point. Here's another version of that. I repeatedly will photograph a scene that intrigues me, and this is the same one that we saw earlier on with that blade of sand, and this one had footprints on it, and I thought it told an interesting story. Oh, this is down in Monterey. This is a little bit different, but in some ways it applies. I photograph the ways that humans interact with nature. I didn't include a lot of these. This one just kind of snuck in. This is just an oil spot under a car in a parking lot, and it creates an incredible, I mean, it's a beautiful rainbow of colors, but it's kind of holds a heaviness to it. because this has, I call this series Runoff. It's all about what gets washed into the streams. So it seduces people into seeing the beauty of something and then has a little punch in the end. I was talking about pears. Here's a pear of loon, almost looking like a silk screen, very graphic. I reduce things down a lot. I don't have a lot of like extraneous things in my photographs normally. I have very sparse images. Here's another pair, a mom and a pup, harbor seal. Again, placing them right in the center and reducing it down to basically just them and the water. And this is a egret bringing some sticks in for nesting, and that's their mating plumage there. And then showing another effect of humans out in Point Reyes, this ranch road, but also very stripped down and very almost a design element. But I'm seeing these in this book that I'll be working on as elements of almost like palate cleansers, ways of resting and resting the eyes a little bit on something with not a lot of content, but also continuing the story of the place. And this was a sunrise with fog rising in the valley where we live. And I just love how it casts these beautiful beams and shadows from the trees into the fog. Again, humans and nature. This, I mean, I could have made a photograph just of that tree on the right side because it's kind of an interesting shaped tree, but I thought it had a interesting relationship to those towers.
Is that Moss Landing?
It is, yeah. And I also gather objects from nature and photograph them en masse, just to create a field of color, or sometimes they're black and white, but these are abalone shells. Don't forget to look up sometimes. You know, we get, as photographers, there's that classic photographer's stance where you get, you know, body height. We stand up and maybe we lean a little bit forward and take a picture, but I get on the ground a lot and I look in different directions a lot. I look up. I'm looking for ways of breaking my normal way of seeing in the world. This was out in Utah. This is a little bit different. Spent some time out there. This is a photograph from Roy's Redwoods. It's a burned out redwood tree with a barn owl. This was one version of this was used in the cover of Bay Nature when they talked about fire, California, and with fire and resiliency. I'm looking at it in my house right now. I have this at a 40-inch print, and it looks really beautiful. Again, looking down, and it's a wave coming up on the shore at Agate Beach in Bolinas, with rocks getting black, being wet. And I just saw it immediately as this beautiful abstract, and letting, you know, putting my camera on a tripod, letting the wave move and getting a little bit of movement. Bobcat, getting down very low on the ground, laying on the ground here in order to get it elevates a creature when you do this. When you look at them from ground level, it gives, if you just shot this from above, it would make the cat seem a lot smaller. This way it gives them a lot of more majestic quality and highlights that hunter quality of it.
Did he know you were there?
You know, I don't remember if he saw me. I don't think he saw me. No. You can see, like, these images are very stripped down. They're very sparse. You know, this is called buck and beach grass, and there's beach grass and there's a buck, and that's it. And I think there's strength in that. I'm a big fan of very minimal images.
Do you do anything to remove the sky?
No, that was just a gray sky. So it's not fully removed. It's there's actually tone in there. If you see a print of this, it actually has some gray, which is the equivalent of whatever the blue was or the gray was. But I do, I work with all my images in Photoshop and work the contrast to the point that I like it. I spent many, over 20 years in the darkroom printing, so I work from that direction. I just love the light inside this wave. I think it's really beautiful. Lately, I've been spending time at this pond and sitting under some camouflage netting. And I've been wanting to get, rather than shooting with longer lenses, telephoto lenses, I've been wanting to get closer to animals and have a more intimate experience, both just physically to be there with them, because it's very intense when the males are bugling. It's a very powerful energy, and to be close that they don't, so close but they don't see you. I mean, the females, when they came in, you could see they were tentative and they were not quite sure what was over there across the pond. I'm very close, and I'm just snuggled up in a bush with this netting over me and not moving, just not moving at all. I haven't got the photograph yet that I'm looking for, but this is getting closer.
Have you ever had an animal attack you or be angry that you were there or show any
No,
signs?
I'm careful. If I sense that I'm starting to bother them, like we have these owls on where we live, and we walk. Cindy and I will be there photographing them. Then we're like, okay, I think we need to let them be, because it's hunting time. The night's coming on, and I mean, I did have a snake fall on me the other day. I was going into our garage and I opened the door and there was a snake up above the door and it knocked it down and landed on my shoulder. It scared the hell out of me. But it wasn't trying to attack me.
I've got another kind of unrelated question. You're
Yeah,
laying on the ground in Point Reyes and all these grassy, brushy areas. What about ticks?
ticks are a problem.
Do you,
I'm always watching. I'm checking. Yeah, there's certain times of the year where it's not as bad. Like I haven't been noticing as many right now. But there's times where I've stepped into an area and I look down and I've got 10 ticks on my pant leg. But Cindy and I are very careful when we get home. We do tick checks and wash our clothes and all that. Yeah, because they're certainly there. If there's elk or deer, there's going to be ticks. But if you look at their fur, they don't seem to have a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes you see them, they obviously have ticks on them. Oops. This is a northern harrier. I just love the extension of these wings. I think it's very, very beautiful. This is a mama owl. I've been watching her babies grow up, and you can see she has a damaged pupil in her left eye. But she seems to be successful. She's been bringing food to the babies, and which is just interesting that she could do that with that injury. This is shooting through the flowers and letting everything just go misty, and just making sure I had the focus on the antlers so that that's sharp. Even though it's soft, it's still sharp.
Yeah.
I'm growing to like this image a lot. I think it has a beautiful quality. This is the moon rising over Willow Point on Tomales Bay. There's that same owl, but she roosts on these posts. We've seen her there quite a bit, and I just wanted to create some kind of lead in and order in this photograph.
Wow.
Mhm.
I think these birds are amazing. They're the dancer-like quality that they create with their wings. Cindy and I have spent a lot of time photographing this rookery, and it's just been really fun. Again, stripping down things, objects from nature into a very, this could be a story about drought. Um, I think it's also a very strong design element too. I could see this as a large print, just as an object. There's a northern spotted stretching the wing out. Can I stop here and see if does anybody have any kind of questions or anything like that?
Where's the rookery with the great blue heron?
That's in Point Reyes, but actually this last winter when we had the storms, the trees got blown down. So they're going to have to find a new place this season. So it's kind of I went there to see this year, and the trees were just completely blown down. This is a young uh, great horned owl. Still haven't gotten the ear tufts yet, and still kind of ragged. You probably all know this spot out in Point Reyes. Cypress trees. This is an interesting image. I've gotten down, I'm laying down, and I'm getting the reflection off the wet sand where the waves come up onto the beach, and it's getting the sky reflection. And then I love how the spray is framed in that Chimney Rock area of Point Reyes. This is the mom coming in, or maybe dad, I'm not sure, and the three young ones. And the nest is just impressive. It's so big. They really look dinosaur-like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were you in that?
On a cliff side. So I'm about looking down a little bit, kind of level with it.
How far away?
This is pretty far. This is probably a couple 100 feet, something like that.
It seems like a really intimate moment.
Yeah, very much.
Open it up.
Yeah, yeah. This is out in Utah. I just put that in there. I love black and white. These are elk antlers that are collected by the park from the Tule elk. And then they grind them up and sprinkle the grindings back out for the critters to eat. But I got access to the shed where they store the antlers and did these photographs. I was fortunate with the company Visionary Wild that I'm going to teach in Point Reyes with to go down the Colorado River in April on a 12-day rafting trip. And this is an old boat that was from 1917, that their expedition didn't work out and they just left it there, and then the park chained it down, and it's been sitting there ever since. And thought it was just a neat in relationship to the landscape around it. This is a kingfisher. And I love how this one is almost like a tapestry. It has almost like a Japanese quality. It's very hard. I don't know if anybody's photographed kingfishers before, but it's very hard to get close to them. I photographed canoes in a lot of different ways, and this was up in British Columbia. And again, stripped down to some very basic elements. Another way of photographing a feather. This one I print very large. I printed about 6 feet.
Wow.
We saw that one before. This to me talks about this area very much. The oak tree, the cow. We all see those beautiful sliver moons in the evening. There's that classic boat, which is really falling apart now. It's barely holding together. And this is a ritual that these raven do before they're going to have babies. They trade beaks, and it's in the rain. This one I love. The wind's blowing the feathers away and revealing the down underneath.
Hmm.
We think of them as black birds, but they actually have some white in them. This is my old dog Sam. I call this Sam on board. It's just kind of an interesting image. Up in the Yuba River. This is in Hawaii on the Big Island. Doing on tripod, a little bit longer exposure to get the movement of the waves coming up. This is another thing with human and nature. It's a tar truck that I saw on the side of the road, and I borrowed this skull from a friend and put it on it. And it needed something to work with that black, and also with the American flag, with the dripping tar. This is during the tar sands time, when it was really in the news. I thought it was just a way of talking about that. Another canoe shot. Beautiful wave of oak trees. This is on Tomales Bay. This is the one that was on the cover of Bay Nature. It's the same owl as the other one, but just a different day, different lighting.
So is that a night shot and you used a flash?
No, it's all daytime, on tripod, and it's just morning light.
Okay.
Yeah. I just tried it out the other night, and it felt really wrong with these northern spotted owls to use flash. And there's a lot of issues that happen. You're going to see red eye because you're getting they have such huge pupil, openings in their eyes that you're seeing right back to their retina.
I know I got a purple eye on a shot once.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
so
actually. Yeah.
I bet you it's interesting. But I have the feeling that it must really disturb their night vision. So I'm not doing it. This is another very stripped down image, but I love the way the cloud is coming down and meeting the rise of the beach grass in the dunes. It's a young elephant seal.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I love looking at wildlife photography, but never really have done it. So are you walking to a spot and you just sit there and wait, or do you know that they tend to be in this certain spot? Like how do you
Yeah.
find
Some of it's driving. Sometimes to be in your car is actually the best blind to have, because they don't recognize you. It's not a person, it's not a creature, it's just this block of something coming towards them. So sometimes from a car, but like this one, it was actually, I think we got out of the car. But like I said, at the pond where I'm photographing the elk now, I hike in very carefully, and I have to sneak and kind of go low through the bushes and sidle on up, slide on my butt until I get to the place I want to be. And then sometimes the owls are, within walking distance and easy to get to. The flying birds. It just depends. Yeah. Like this was walking on the beach, and this osprey had just caught this fish. And I love how their eyes are the same, but they're having a different experience. The perch is wondering what the hell is going on. You know, I think it's striking. This is the two northern spotted owls preening, and I'm actually on a ladder on an adjacent tree, level with them, in order to get this image. I'm always looking for abstracts, shapes in nature, and this is just sand formations. I thought it had a great graphic quality and it's interesting enough. I shot it from many different angles. I got a couple shots that I like. This is one of them. Beautiful offshore winds with large surf. It created this beautiful spray. Got a lot. This is a long exposure looking at a lake, so the water's moving. So it's maybe a minute long exposure. So there's a lot of brushiness in the water. So of course I'm on a tripod. And then shooting in the fog again. In a way of leading the eye in, looking at the elk, the front elk, and then it leads off into the diagonal to see the female in the distance. Here's another way of exploring how to photograph a feather. It's a feather on fire. So I have also done it where I've frozen feathers and done other things like that. It's a thing to think about. If there's something that interests you in life, like if you like cars or if you like woodworking, maybe photograph your tools, or or if you like cooking, maybe do some detailed shots of cooking implements, but do it in a way that you explore your creativity. For me, I like objects from nature, and I really love feathers. So I keep exploring them. Again, like that, if you remember that abalone photograph, abalone shell. This is another one with Monterey pine cones, done in a similar way. Again, leading the viewer through the image.
Where is that?
It's up on Mount Barnaby. Yeah, very foggy day. And I have to say, the images that are the most simplistic looking are sometimes the more complicated ones to do. Because you have to really hold the tonality, like in the processing of the image, like to have these dark trunks and then hold the highlights and have everything in the mid-tones that are off in the distance there. It's all very important to describe this very simple photograph, but it has to be compelling by its tonality. Well, there's that same one. This is actually a commission for guide dogs for their residence hall. They have a big, I think it's about a 50-inch print of this. And they wanted something that was of Marin, but didn't have a lot of content, in a sense, that it was very stripped down. And this is what we came up with. Well, I came up with, and then they agreed upon it. So again, to look up, and just the sky sometimes can be beautiful. So I think that's that. And Stephanie, should I talk about the triptych thing, or should we talk about anything that I've shown?
I would say let's do Q&A first,
Yeah.
and then we'll do it last.
Okay.
Unless you prefer to do it now. Let's do that now, actually. Why not?
Okay.
So he's referring to our photo challenge, and I'm stalling because I'm looking for the flyer for it. So, and I think it's really a neat flyer. So I'm going to share my screen for 1 second.
Okay.
And I'll let you tell about this.
All right. So here's your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is to create a triptych. And a triptych classically is, I think, started in the Gothic times with these religious icon, usually kind of gold leaf paintings on 3 panels that were shown together in a sanctuary. But in art, it's become to me, 3 images together that sit together. So this one here is, 3 objects from nature. They're all, and each individual one could stand on its own as an image that has strength. That's always the strength of a triptych, when each one has strength in its own, but together they create even a different conversation. So here we have, make a triptych, 3 photographs shown side by side that are related in content, concept, sequential or narrative, or detail. You could, for instance, you could do, I'll show some samples, but you could do, a photograph of a fork and just go into the fork in detail, show a very detailed part of the tines, and then maybe one of the handle, and maybe one of some engraving on it. And then you show those as 3 images together, and it all together, it tells a story of that fork. It could be in concept. It could be something that has to do with an idea. Maybe the photographs look different and aren't necessarily of the same object, but all 3 images are talking about some sort of concept. And we'll look at some images here. It could be color. It could be that you have 3 images that really talk about the color red. Maybe a red fire hydrant, a red teapot, and then a red apple. And call your triptych red. So it can be these, and then it could be, it's always open-ended. There's your whole creative, it's open to any kind of creativity there. But let me see here if I can get these up.
While you're doing that, cats.
There we go, and sharing a screen. And then view. Okay, so here's a triptych about horse. You have a detail of the mane, you have a profile, a portrait of the horse, and then of the place where it lives. It's not, the fence is not necessarily, if the fence was by itself, well, that's just an image of a fence, but put it alongside the horses or the horse images, it feels right. It has a quality that holds together. I did a bunch of a series of image triptychs about water, about the water cycle. So here we have one with clouds on the left and the ocean. And then we have roots and a stream. And then we have actually a culvert here with water flowing through it. Inside the culvert looking through. So each one of these as a separate image, I think, have strength. They hold together as an individual image. But together they talk about something. You could say this is a conceptual one. It's talking about the water cycle. Here's another one with a cloud, these stacked stones in a stream, and then this water pipe going into water. Though the one on the left is a little bit more abstract, but they all talk about water in another fashion. Here we have wave, we have cloud containing water, and clouds over the ocean, talking about water and the water cycle in a conceptual way. But hopefully, again, and you notice the shapes are different. Like I have 2 squares, and then I have a vertical in the center. So they don't have to be the same shape. And here's wave up on shore, trees looking to the sky, and then clouds. I think the tree is probably the one that's kind of the outlier here, but to me it talks, because it's paired with these other 2, it talks about the respiration of trees and sucking up moisture and releasing it to the sky. And there's that one again. So anybody have any questions about that challenge, if you choose to accept it?
I can
No?
say I'm very excited and inspired. I can't wait to go out and shoot. The
Yeah.
challenge is inspiring, and just your work in it itself is inspiring. I can't wait to try.
Excellent work, Todd.
Thank you.
I look forward to taking on the challenge.
Good.
What
Yeah,
is that
it's really it's a great thing to do. I think it really gets you in some ways outside the box of the normal thinking of individual images. You know, it's yeah.
What is that image on the right? The heart.
It's a seashell. It's a cockle turned on edge. So normally, if you look from the top, it would look like your classic shell. But when you turn it on edge, it's the two halves coming together.
Hmm.
I actually propped that up on a piece of banana because I didn't have any stickum, so I just cut a piece of banana. You know, a lot of photography for me, it's using what you have. You don't like some. I was with Cindy at the Carmel River. I think it was this winter. It's happened a couple times, and I forgot my tripod, and so I gather three sticks, three large kind of walking sticks. I take off my belt and I wrap around the top and cinch it down, and then I've got myself a little wooden tripod, and I set my camera on it, and I can do a nice long exposure. A lot of improvisation going on in photography and ways of lighting. And one thing shooting with Cindy that's really helped me is that she's a beginner, though getting some beautiful images now. But she got me out of my normal way of thinking, because with her beginner's mind, anything was possible. So we'd go out and she'd be shooting photographs out of focus and blurred and moving the camera around and taking chances where, you know, as we go along, we get a little bit more stodgy, or I do. And, you know, things need to be sharp and they need to be framed and all this stuff. So it gave me permission to play a little bit. And it's always good to just step out of your normal way. Like, I challenge you to just go out and kind of just don't even look through the viewfinder and just take some pictures as you walk through the world, and then go home and look and see what you got and just see how you might be surprised. Letting go of the control a little bit.
So the maple leaf, did you put it on a black background, like
I
black?
did.
cardboard?
Yeah, yeah, it's on a black piece of fabric.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the feather is on a piece of sort of parchment paper, and then bottom lit, and then actually, you know, bottom lit and then top lit to match a little bit. And it's actually suspended from the background with pins, so that it's not just laying on the surface of the paper, it's floating about 2 inches above the paper. And that gives it a little bit of depth. You don't see it as much here, but as a print, it really has some more depth than if it was just laying flat on the paper. And the maple leaf is actually lit with a flashlight, so it's in a dark room, and then I'm letting little streams of light coming through my hand, and I'm painting with the light in order to get a sort of side lit contrast to really define the veins of the leaf. Yeah. So that's that. Yeah. I really invite any questions that you might have, or any thoughts that you'd like to share about your photography, or issues that you're coming up against in your own personal journey. If you're photographing with a cell phone, or if you're photographing, you know, a certain subject matter. I've shown you my nature stuff, but I've done so many types of photography for making a living, and that there might be some way that I could, I don't know, help you out.
Well, I'd like to ask you about your class. Is there a waiting list, and when is it?
The one in January is full, and it's a 4-day, 4-night, 5-day workshop, and it's in January, the end of January. If you go to Visionary Wild,
Okay.
You can go to their website and it's on there, and they do have waiting lists because sometimes people do drop out. It's kind of a, a higher end, well, yeah, higher end experience where all meals are provided. You stay at which might not make sense for people that live out here. You stay at the Inverness Valley Inn. Each person has a room. We're close to the park. That's the one thing that's great about it. It's out by Chicken Ranch Beach there. So we can get up really early and stay late and still get back in time for dinner and all that stuff and have breakfast provided. It's a neat organization, but man, some of their trips are pricey. They go to Antarctica, they go to Greenland, they do a 3 week in Kyrgyzstan, up in the mountains, stay in yurts up there, and it's pretty amazing. So, yeah.
I think your work is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful.
Oh,
It's gorgeous.
And to just that little last shell thing, to just think about turning a shell on its side
Mhm.
was it's very inspiring, and your work's great. Thank you.
No, absolutely. That's a good point. That to look at, the longer you do photography, kind of the harder it gets to find something new. How many times do you see a shell like that on the beach? And I don't know if it was Cindy that pointed it out, but at some point we were looking at it and we saw that it was a heart shape and kind of like angel wings, and just to for me it's to look at nature anew as much as possible, to not just pass by. Like we joke about seagulls. We see a bird coming, you go, oh, that's just a seagull. It's like, wait a second, these are incredible birds. They fly amazingly well, but it's just because they're so common. You see an eagle and that's a big deal, but you see a seagull and like, not that interesting. But like Cindy has a photograph of just the close up of a seagull's eye. It's beautiful.
Wow.
Just to think of, challenge yourself to really look at the world anew every time you go out, and that's hard. And I learned that more than anything when I photographed for this winery. I shot for about 10 years for them, and it got harder and harder to do anything new. And when I first started, everything was fun and kind of got all the best images. And then it was, okay, what do I do today? I would call my friend who's a photographer in South Dakota, and we went to school together. And I would say, what do I do? And he'd say, well, how about today if you just put your camera down and go for a walk? Like, oh, I never thought of that. Kind of cleanse the palate a little bit and look at things fresh again. And so there's a lot of things that are, it's like if anybody, it's like when someone says they're bored, well, that's that person's problem. How can you be bored in this world? There's so much beauty and so much to see. So it's like how to keep investigating and keep trying. And I certainly go out days and it's a bust. I get nothing. Also, because as you do it longer, your expectation of what is a good photograph goes up.
So when did you switch? You switched from film to digital? When? And were you using Tri-X or?
Yeah, I started with large format. I shot 8x10 and 4x5. And medium, I had a 6x7 medium format camera, and I shot a lot of Pan-X, the 125 speed film. Certainly shot Tri-X, but Pan-X mostly because I like the fine grain. And I started working for a place in Sebastopol called Color Folio, where we did scanning, high-end scanning, in like 2002. And it was very hard to let go of that. There's a certain romance with the whole world of film and the dark room, but I'm so happy to not be in the dark room with the chemistry and it's pretty popular now. A lot of kids are excited about film and sort of the romance of it. And there's so much waste, the amount of water that gets washed down the drain. And it always felt wrong to be talking about nature, and at the same time you're dumping chemistry. And
Yeah.
so I'm happy that it's the way it is.
Yeah,
Also,
one last question. How long have you guys been together?
we've been married for 11 years, 17 years, 18, 19.
And so what took you so long to start shooting,
I know.
Cindy?
It's a great question, right? It was always Todd's thing. And, he went out, and then during COVID, he was like, do you want to go with me? And then I was just, because he was stopping and taking pictures, I thought, I'll take some of my cell phone. But it is so much fun. I really love it. And I just wanted to say that the question around, do you go out specifically to find a certain creature? Or do you know? I I've experienced where Todd says we're going to go here to look for, and we will go there, and they're not there, but the unexpected again is so amazing that something else will show up, and it feels like, oh, that's why we're here, So,
I'm going to share a picture of Cindy since we're here.
Oh,
Nice.
Isn't
beautiful.
that beautiful?
Yes.
Two of my favorite shots were the little sand dune on the beach.
Yes.
I got the feeling, did you lay down on the sand to like enlarge the perspective of the dune and make it look bigger? Was it a small
You
sand?
mean with the sort of spine leading in?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is actually shot with a tilt shift lens.
Okay.
Are you familiar with those at
Never
all?
used them, but I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, so that's
What is it?
it's a lens that you can tilt the plane of focus. It's used in architectural photography to correct parallax of buildings. So when you're shooting up, the building doesn't do this or do this. But it allows you also to get incredible depth of field. You can get the foreground in focus and the distance in focus. So I'm shooting very wide. It's a 24, pretty wide, 24 millimeter. So the foreground is very prominent, and I am pretty low. I'm maybe knee high on it, so that the foreground really feels kind of meaty, and it really takes up a lot of the picture, and then it gets delicate as it leads off into the distance.
People have done that with
I'm
Photoshop.
about to run out of power. Hold on.
Oh, sure.
I love the shot, Cindy.
Thank
Yeah, I do too. Beautiful.
It's almost like you can't see it.
Yeah, I think this is just a stunning, so but if I took this photograph, yeah, I think I wouldn't there's a certain acknowledgement that's happening between Cindy and this coyote, and there's a delicate quality. Mine might be a little bit more, I don't know, heroic, or, a little bit more masculine in some way, but there's a certain very delicate acknowledgement that's happening here. I have the print of it sitting on our couch right here, and I think it's just lovely.
Do you help
Would
each
you
other?
put, I'm sorry.
Do you edit each other's work? Like, help each other pick the best shots, or?
A little bit. I'm a little bit more stingy. I keep my stuff a little bit quiet. Cindy's always like, let me see all your work. I want to see what you're doing. I pick a few here and there.
And I always want, I see when he's shooting some beautiful ones on the back of his camera, but those aren't the ones that he chooses. So it's interesting. I always want to choose other ones. Yeah.
Todd, would you have put that coyote in the middle?
I might have. I probably would have taken a few. But that was a conversation. Cindy had cropped it to a square and put it in the middle.
Yeah, I like that question.
The way that it's sitting in the landscape, it feels like it's leading the viewer into that beautiful open space of softness, and kind of a dweller on a threshold there. So
It's beautiful.
I think it is nice that it's off to the side like that.
That was Todd's editing eye for that piece of putting it to the side. Yeah.
It's hard, especially when you have a situation like this where she was very successful that evening, and she had maybe 10 successful photographs of this coyote, and like, which one do you pick? Which,
Mhm.
and you have to really, that's when you have to drop into, okay, which one is really tugging on your heartstrings in a sense, what is feeling right in and has some sort of emotional quality. Photography is a funny beast, because it is so technical and it has all this, but there, you can arrive at this emotional content also within that, and that's the challenge, I think, is how to make that leap, and that those things come together in the right
Mhm.
way.
I want to know when you guys do a exhibition together.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Yeah, no, I've thought about it because I just did a shot the other night that I think would be beautiful with this coyote photograph. So I think it will happen some way. Yeah.
Let us know.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
I have a question. The first time I went to see your work, your studio was in the same place where John Cordy's.
Oh, right. Yeah, in Point Reyes Station. And now I'm over in Inverness Park.
Yeah, no, I've been there
Yeah.
too. And
Yeah.
sat in the boat, but there's so many photographers in Point Reyes.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, Art Rogers does people, but Carlos Parada also, and others
Yeah.
do wildlife photography. Do you ever go out with them or
No, I run into Carlos quite well every once in a while. Carlos Parada. Um, we don't. I think because if I'm going to go out shooting, really shooting, I want to go by myself. If I'm going out and I want to immerse myself and have the full experience, it's like being in a painting studio. It's hard to hang out with someone and work on a painting, to really get into that sort of drifting mind where you lose track of time. And, I love that feeling. Saying that, I'm looking at Cindy right next to me on the screen. Cindy, I love going out with you, and hiking and doing, but when I can go out and have this immersive experience, but it's also fun to go out with friends. There's no doubt about it. But uh, I haven't gone. It's hard. Also timing. It's hard to get people that are on this can get together and do it. And
I can
that's a good
imagine
question.
you would bump into Carlos.
Yeah, Sandy and I saw him on the beach. Pretty long ago now, but and I don't see Marty Knapp ever out there. Let me see who else is. Richard Blair, we run into Drake's Beach sometimes. There's a lot of. I mean, there's not only just the local photographers out there. There's, it's a national park, so you have tons of people photographing there. It's really, it's not uncommon to see all these big lenses flying around on the trails. People pulling out their long telephoto lenses, and Cindy's always joking as we walk down the trail. Everybody's comparing who's got the bigger telephoto
Mhm.
lens. It's kind of funny.
When you go for a walk on a stroll, you have a favorite focal length you just take with you?
Yeah, these, I just got I shoot with Canon. I have the Canon R5. I got a new 100 to 500 lens. It's a zoom. If I was to be, if I could only have one prime lens, it would be a 100 macro, because then I can do my macro shots. I can do sort of portrait size images, and then I can still do landscape with it. But I've been really enjoying this lens. It goes from 100 to 500, so I can get, close up of an owl, or I can still do many things in between. And it's pretty good with getting tight shots too, of like a flower.
It's an excellent lens. I have it as well. Yeah,
Do you have that lens?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm blown away by it. It's
And
really,
the same camera.
yeah.
I mean,
All right.
yeah.
We're on the same team.
Well, it's interesting because my go-to before was the 7200 2.8,
Yes.
but now I can't leave without that 100 500.
Yeah, it's expensive, but I took a long time to buy it. But I'm glad I did. And it's important to not get too tied up in like for instance, right now I'm trying to get closer to these elk rather than use longer lenses, because the closer you can get to something, you don't have atmosphere between you and the subject. Let's just say you're shooting with a long telephoto. At some point, you're actually going to get the effects of atmosphere, heat rising from the ground, and your image is going to look soft and out of focus. So the closer you can get is going to be a more compelling, and if you could get 2 feet away from a bear's face and take a portrait of them, it's going to be pretty powerful, and then you die. But that's okay. But as opposed to the classic, you can tell when something's far away when someone's done a long telephoto shot.
Well, he
So-
probably won't eat the camera.
That's right.
So Cindy will get the card.
That's right.
Great.
Yeah. So I do think it's both. Some people say that equipment doesn't matter. I think it's both. It does matter, and you can also do pretty well with, like, Cindy's camera is not the greatest camera. It's a smaller sensor, and the lens is not top of the line, and she gets beautiful photographs. So there's no excuse, even shooting with a cell phone. I mean, cell phone's harder for animals because it's hard to get close up to them and get those images, but to photograph landscapes and details of things, you can, especially with details with the cell phone, to do little macro shots, you can get some beautiful imagery. So there's no reason to not use one. I think of it as vocabulary in grammar. A lens, it just gives you a different vocabulary. It allows you to do a certain different take or write a different sentence about what you're looking at. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. You might have already said it and I missed it, but do you have any social media that I can follow you? Do you post
Oh
on
yeah.
Instagram?
Thanks
You
for
do?
asking. Yeah, Todd Pickering photo on Instagram. I'm posting pretty regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great account.
Oh, thank you. Would you follow me?
I do.
What's your name?
George Osner.
What's your Instagram?
It's just my name, G.
Okay.
Osner.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not using Facebook these days. I'm using Instagram, and with select few people. I don't have this huge following. I don't have a lot, and it's just to kind of keep the conversation going and getting a sense of what people might react to a little bit, to see what things are. I don't know. It's just a little game I'm playing. I'm certainly not chasing it. And it's always fun to just see. I love putting an image up on my computer and then going to my phone and then seeing it as this little small scale model of the image I just posted. It's kind of a different way of looking at it. Kind of fun. Yeah.
That owl is so sweet on here.
Oh, that one, yeah, yeah. That one, it's a powerful image. It's very. That's been a big seller. I have had it in many shows, and it's done pretty well. That's a whole nother world, the whole commerce of it and selling images. It's a different thing, different creature.
To say too, that owl was amazing because we hiked back, ticks, poison oak through this area. Todd took me to see the owl, and he was probably 20 feet up, wouldn't you say, honey?
Yeah.
And sat really deeply back into the tree. So he said, "Do you see?" And took me a moment to even see where the owl was.
Yeah.
And Todd has this way of really observing and tracking details to find where there might be an owl or
Yeah.
creature of some kind.
It's fun. It's fun.
You ever do day workshops?
Yeah, and if you guys are ever interested in doing something, we can do something that's more affordable than this Visionary Wild sort of thing, and do something that's like a half day, or go out
I'll
for a
sign up.
sunset thing.
Yeah, I'll
and-
sign up.
yeah,
Right.
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about that.
Early morning morning or would it be night? Because I know we have a couple people that are not morning people.
Yeah, I would say
not
generally
looking
people are
at
not. It's harder to get out there early. So and also the light is usually most beautiful in the evening out there.
Yeah.
Sun setting over the ocean, and so it would be evening probably or afternoon. Meet it.
It's one of us.
Just out of curiosity, could just raise your hand or something. Let me know if you would be interested. I know that Sandy, George, David, Mallory, Cindy.
Cindy.
Cindy has to pay twice. No. But Erica,
Yeah.
would you be interested in something like that?
You can include me, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it out. I'm super busy right now, but
Well, it can be off.
sounds
It can be off in
fun.
the future a little bit.
Yeah, I only use a phone, and that's all I'm doing. So I don't know if I'd just be eyeing at all your lenses and
I
stuff.
only use the phone.
That you'd be surprised. There's ways of, like, I bring with me a little fold-up diffusion disc. It's a thing that folds out that has a bit of translucent white material, and you use that sometimes for photographing flowers and to block out sunlight and make this nice soft diffused light. And you could just work with that, doing shots of details in nature, and you'll be surprised at the quality of the imagery just from doing that one simple process of diffusing the light a little bit rather than harsh light coming in on, which is what we normally do. So I wouldn't write it off.
Okay.
I would say that's how I got started. So be careful because you might be spending a lot of money on a camera.
Yeah, Cindy was shooting with her cell phone in the beginning, and I started seeing she was getting some neat images, and it's like, wait a second, you need to have something a little better because you just can't get it with what you're doing. But she was still getting some great photographs.
So really fun.
It's a great training tool. You see it immediately. It's really a way to. It's low cost of entry, which is nice. A great way to work.
So
Right.
it looks like at least 6 people, and I suspect there'd probably be a lot more.
Yeah.
So let's chat.
It's a little tricky in that to do classes in the park, you have to have get not a license but a permit. So I'd have to kind of check into that because the way I'm doing it now, this company is providing all that, and we might have to do it in a way that is just friends meeting as opposed to a class.
Well, if you
Would that
want
also apply to Tamales Bay? Because that's a state park where the elk are.
State parks are that way too, because actually I was up at
It's just-
Cataract Falls one time and I was just teaching one student, and a ranger came up and said, "What you doing?" Because I had all this fancy equipment with me, and he thought I was teaching, and I was.
A bunch of tripods is usually a giveaway.
Yeah, exactly. Tripod and all sorts of stuff. So
Wow, I didn't know that.
so it's kind of interesting in that way. So we could maybe do it where we just meet and keep it light and simple. Maybe like at Drake's Beach, go for a walk on Drake's Beach, and there's so much to photograph there. The birds are amazing, the waves and the detritus on the beach and the cliffs. It's just a dynamic spot.
I've got a suggestion for people for Drake's Beach.
Yes.
I think it's Saturday, August 12th, 25th, or 26th is the annual sandcastle contest. And I don't know if people have seen that, but there are fantastic sculptures in sandcastles once a year.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
That could be a good triptych
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put that one on the list.
Yeah.
I
Thanks.
was just looking at my calendar and it says sand, and I'm like, what now? Thank you very much. Now I know it's the sand thing out there. Thank you.
Well, hopefully I can come back and see your triptychs if you guys do it. I could be there at that meeting and see what you guys show.
We
Well, Cindy, you're on Facebook, right? You could show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we post our channel.
Okay.
So the assignment is the triptych thing that like the one, not, but with three.
Three images. Now, some of you are more clever with apps and programs that you can put the three images together on a page, like in Photoshop, but some people are not using these programs, so you could just show your three images, side by side, just as a scroll through or something like that, however you want to post it.
Can it be like 1 and 2, or
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like straight across?
Yeah, ideally that, but yeah, if you don't have a way of posting it in that way, just do 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3. But I think Facebook allows you to do that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, that will be fun to see. And anytime you guys are out on a Saturday in Inverness Park, please stop by my studio and say hi. You don't have to buy anything. You can just come in and chat. I'd like to meet you in person.
How far are you from like the general store or the tap?
Just that. Yeah, there's that tap room, and then there's Nani's Spirit Matters, that store next to it. And then I'm just down 2 buildings down. It says gallery. It's got a feather for the sign.
Right.
And I'm usually there Saturdays 12 till 5.
Hey, Sandy.
I know. Todd's one of us. We're the late ones. The night owls.
That's right.
Let me know if you want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
You're
great.
welcome.
That was great.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Wonderful images.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Excellent work. Thank you.
All right.
Really fun to be here. Thank you, Stephanie, for creating.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for making this happen. Yay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody. And I'll post this if you want to watch it again. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay.
I'll talk
Thanks.
to Todd about maybe organizing something. And, maybe we just show up as the photo club.
Right.
And they have a problem with 10 individuals being there with cameras. I don't know why they would.
Bring a towel, and then we'll just throw the towel on the beach and say we're hanging out. No problem.
Right.
No, I don't think it would be an issue.
How much would a permit be?
I don't know what they are. There's issues with insurance too and things like that. And I think it comes down to when money's exchanged. I think if you just show up, it's not a problem.
Well, we would pay you after the fact.
There you go. Buy me a sandwich.
Well, I'll talk to you about details. Who,
Okay.
what time, and where, how much, and etc.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Both of you. Thank you. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.